I made a whole career out of prostitution in history here, or heroin, sorry.
It is the #1 trafficking area in the Southeast.
Anytime there's an active shooter, anything dangerous where like death was imminent, they're like, oh, send Roman. She loves that. And for the next couple years, we did all those documentaries, prostitution, heroin, panhandling, which is tied back to prostitution and heroin, 24-hour PD, which ultimately ended my career. I mean, I went to a prostitute's baby shower. If I walked into Walmart, someone would yell, "Hey, news lady," which I love. When you're the provider of their work, their dope, their alcohol, their everything, they circled around him like an iron shield. What happened to you today? Well, someone threw a bottle at me. But the most beautiful thing, like, that officer was so good to me, and he was like, I don't know what you're doing or why, but if you go sleep in that Walmart, I patrol that.
Welcome back to the He's Wrong, She's Right podcast. I'm Andrew. This is Nona, and today we're joined with Casey Roman. Wait, are you local? Or are you transplant?
Right. Okay. How do you think I got here?
Okay, I meant transplant wise.
Yeah. Oh no! I'm from New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm from God's country, but yeah, local now. 2008 I moved here.
Okay.
Local enough.
What brought you here?
Work. The TV station. Yeah.
Is that what you were doing up in Jersey?
No.
Okay.
No. I was in Memphis, Tennessee before here in news.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, instead of, major gang-related crime, I'll come to this nice little beach villa. And then I made a whole career out of prostitution in history here, or heroin, sorry.
It is the #1 trafficking area in the Southeast. So you didn't realize that when you moved here?
I didn't. It wasn't on the marketing
Wilmington
materials.
is beautiful. Find your prostitutes, your heroin.
We do.
They send you a pitch deck, and they're like, okay, there's some stuff in the asterisk down. Just don't read that. Don't read the bad stuff. Yeah.
Right.
But it did wonders for my news career, so really? I can't complain.
That's good. So I guess jump around because I know bits and pieces. I know that you like to travel. I know that you did the van thing for a while. Obviously the book. Is there any other big jobs or positions or anything in between that other than
news?
Yeah.
No, I came here in 2008 to work at the TV station. I always tell people that I tricked. In fact, I think it's on the back of the book. I tricked the TV station into hiring me because I have a business degree and I had a focus on finance, and that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to go boss people around in a corporate setting and get paid. And
as one does.
And so, but I took these gap years where I went and traveled and did all kinds of stuff. And so when I graduated, right in 2008, which was flawless, right into the recession when nobody's getting jobs. And so I was bartending in Memphis and valeting, and I got a random internship at a TV station in Memphis, and I kind of liked it, but I really decided Wilmington, for whatever reason, I was going to go live in Wilmington. And I came down here with, in news, you don't have really a resume, you have a reel, which is just snapshots of your news stories. But I didn't have that because I didn't go to journalism school. I did spreadsheets and things like that in college.
So what did you do
So I watched the reporters in the Memphis TV station, and then I just copied, I took their scripts and whatever they said and their mannerisms and how they pointed dead things over their shoulders in a voice not found in nature. And I just copied it, and I put together this
fake reel.
Fake reel. I was the first fake news. You're sitting with the first piece of fake news.
Wow.
And I sent it down here, and they did not want it at all. And so I was challenge accepted. And so I flew here at 6 o'clock in the morning and showed up at the TV station. And they showed me where the bathroom was, and they gave me the public tour. Here's where the news people speak, and here's where, because I had no credentials. And then I'll never forget, the news director patted me on the hand, and he said, thank you so much for visiting. But at best, you would be a long shot.
Oh, okay.
And so I got back on the plane, and I decided that I'd just move somewhere else. And 2 weeks later, I got an email that said, do you want to be our first investigative reporter? And the reason was they felt if I was batshit crazy enough.
They could send you on the crazy assignments.
Yeah, they were like, if she's got the balls to
And also-
show up uninvited.
You were expendable at that point.
we
So
would
if
normally-
anything happened to
Thank
you,
you.
it didn't matter to their
didn't.
team.
It sounds
another
like
one.
it sounds like realistically they're like she has no self-preservation,
Right.
so
No sense
She
of
won't
safety.
care, yeah.
Yeah. And that was eventually they told me that's why they hired me. Like it had nothing to do with like natural talent, ability. No, it was like, she's nuts. She'll go do anything. And so I showed up 2 weeks later, and all the other reporters were like from journalism school. And they
Right.
had their little suits and their little heels and their little notebooks. And I had faked my whole, I didn't even know how to turn the camera on. I had no idea what I was doing. And I got punched in the face for a full year.
Oh, wow.
Of just, when you make mistakes at your first job, like you look like an idiot to your coworkers. When you do it at the local TV station, thousands of people watch you look like an
Right.
idiot.
yeah.
And I figured it out in about a year. And then at the year mark, then I was like, this is what I should be doing. And they did. Anytime there's an active shooter, anything dangerous where like death was imminent, they're like, oh, send Roman. She loves that.
So it's your fake it till you make it story.
Yeah, it
Okay.
genuinely was. Like today, you'd probably get sued over doing that.
I don't know. Look at all these
Some
influencers and everything online.
Yeah. I've actually seen I've seen, like I was telling you earlier, about how people will make they're literally nobodies. But they study YouTube and social media just enough that they know the things to say, the ways to edit, the ways to promote their material.
And then their
And
stuff
then-
goes viral.
And then they're gurus and they know everything.
But I actually find that more honorable than what I did because at least they studied it and they were
Sure.
like, I'm going to commit myself to this. And I just showed up and was like, you're going to love me. Like, it's going to take some time.
it was
but,
the
like,
business bully girl inside of you.
Just wait. But it was really rough that first year. But after that, I was rocking and rolling. And then 3 years in, I was offered to go work on national news in Charlotte. And that was abysmal. And if nobody can see what I'm doing, I'm not petting my leg. I'm petting a couch hippo who is looking like I'm the only person she wants to pay attention to.
Yep.
I did that for 3 years. That show got canceled, and I came back, and through a very serendipitous meeting, I was at the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office for something or other.
Okay.
And I met their narcotics unit, which like those two things don't really ever mix. Like the undercovers and media do not.
Right.
Right.
And I found my people. They had as dark a sense of humor as I did. They swore almost as much as I did. And it was like, I had met my people. And for the next couple years, we did all those documentaries, prostitution, heroin, panhandling, which is tied back to prostitution and heroin, 24-hour PD, which ultimately ended my career. All kinds of big projects.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 24-hour PD was the nail in the coffin.
Oh.
And so then I was like, this is my God-given work. Like I was put on this earth to work with these psychopaths specifically. These are my people. And I would have done documentaries with them for the rest of my life. And then it ended very abruptly.
I only remember when you left. I'll say left because I don't know the conditions in which that happened, but it seemed like it was on your own terms. Is that not true? Or
Kind of pseudo on my own terms. So when I really started working with the drug units and the officers was around 2015, 2016, which coincides with when we had all the major events that made it very fashionable to hate law enforcement, protest law enforcement. And that was the narrative being carried in all the news outlets. Right. And so I was living in this purgatory between going out with the guys like late at night or all day and then coming back to the newsroom and seeing how are these big local stories about police brutality or, policing in general, like how were they being portrayed at our level? And our officers had nothing to do with that.
Right.
And so it was just like we were manifesting it down here, but like I knew them at that point as dads and husbands, and I knew all about their families. And so it stopped being like we were reporting on cops, like you were saying that about the best father that I happen to know.
Right.
And so
he probably just left his little league tournament
who couldn't come home that night because we were chasing around criminals and like keeping it safe so the rest of us can walk around and go like, oh, Wilmington.
Yep.
As though this doesn't happen here. And so it was leading to a lot of like bone-on-bone contact in our newsroom meetings because I was continuing to push these really pro-law enforcement stories, and like that was not what we were selling in news anymore.
Interesting.
And I would like stories would happen that would involve local officers, but like I would get the whole lead up like from them about everything that happened to get to that moment where someone turned on their camera. And I was like, no, like I'd go back and be like, wow, like we're missing all this. And it was just, we just kept getting worse and kept getting worse. So along those documentaries, like 2 years before it ended, I started pitching 24-hour PD because I really believed like if I could get everyone in this community to see everything that happens all around the clock, and like really get to know those officers, they would never say those things about them.
Right.
Like they don't know them like I do.
And what channel is it on?
Channel 6.
24-hour PD was? Oh, I didn't realize that.
If you didn't, I'll tell you why in just a second.
Okay.
So they said no for like 2 years, and then I got my way. I just wore them down. And the problem with shooting anything called 24-hour when you're the only reporter is that you get to work. That many hours with that many officers. So it nearly killed me. It took 4 hours of just constant shooting and editing. And then I wrote it on Thanksgiving very tactically because they didn't want it.
Right.
Like they wanted no part of it. So I thought if I write this and script it and I built 4 perfect 30-minute shows and I send it, they'll be so busy with their families that like we won't have, like I just don't even talk, like let me just I'll bring it back to you with
we need something to fill the 7 p.m. slot. Let's get that in there.
Casing, yeah,
holiday spirit.
That was my whole approach. That I was just gonna like take my golden goose of journalism and just like launch it into the air. And so I wrote it on Thanksgiving and I sent it. And I waited. I remember waiting in the newsroom until like right before 6 o'clock when I thought the dinner plates would start going down. I sent it, I got in the car, I clicked my seatbelt, and I get an email back, reply all. And it was from my news director that said, we will not be airing 24-hour PD. There was no way he could have read it.
Right.
No way.
It was just an immediate no.
Immediate no. And please see me in my office on Monday.
How dare you come up with your own ideas?
So I go in there Monday thinking, like, surely he's about to apologize for the audacity of that email. And, like, you know, we're going to brainstorm marketing and how we're going to do this whole thing. And it was a very frank conversation about it's only going on the website. We're not airing it. Nobody had seen the footage from it.
Okay.
Nobody had like read it. It was just that was it. It's not going to launch. And no more law enforcement stories. And we're taking you off of Investigative and you're going back to Daily News.
Oh, no.
Should have Ryan Reynolds did.
I don't even know what that means, but it sounds great.
Deadpool 1. That's how Deadpool 1 got through after editing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I remember that
they
story.
wanted to throw it away. And so he leaked the footage, and that's when people were like, show us this movie. And so now we have Deadpool 3.
Oh, I had no idea.
I meant
You
1
and I
through
have
3.
learned a
Like,
lot today. We've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Look how small I look compared to you.
It's just
Look
'cause
like
you're
we got like
sitting
a
back.
midget in here.
So
I
obviously,
posted a meme the other day of how I feel every time I interview somebody. It's me this big, and the interview
so
person
tiny.
is
I'm
small.
loving this. I look.
we've got the audio equipment, we've got the lights, but we don't have the best cameras yet. So
No,
whatever.
I love this. I look like I'm a size 0 in here.
So you like being in the middle. She
No,
didn't
I'm
want to
perfect.
be in
I
the
didn't
middle
wanna sit
in the
here and
beginning.
Now I'm like,
So going back to them not wanting to run it, so with them just basically wholesale saying we're not doing this, we're throwing it on the website. Nobody's going to look at it. There's not going to be like a proofread, or I don't know what the terms would be in the news industry for any of that. But did they actually have any statistics or analytics, or was it a money thing? Was it the
they
sponsors?
said that it was too long, but that doesn't make any sense because my prior documentaries were all an hour long.
Gotcha.
And I wrote them as 4 30-minute shows. So Monday through Thursday, our highest watch days. So I knew what I was up against, and so I didn't build hour-long documentaries. And each one flowed into the next one to give people, I really did everything I could to try to make it easy for them. But it wasn't what news was selling.
It was pro-law enforcement.
Era. I mean, I hate to say this, but like, if I had gotten footage of a really horrible interaction, there'd be a bronze statue.
Somebody being dirty, somebody accepting.
But that's not actually, when you watch it, like, there's some really rough confrontations and foot chases and people throwing punches. But the majority of it is like the stupid stuff that people do is like, the teacher who's drunk out of her gourd, who's running her mouth downtown on Saturday night, or like UNCW any day of the week. Like, it's a lot of, but within that, like, the point wasn't to really make fun of people, or it was just to show that, like, this is every day, all day long, of everything that goes on. And for me and for the public, you step in their world for a second and it's like, but for them, that's like 30 years. And I also wanted people to see that sometimes we would go to a scene and one of the officers would just be like lit. Like he would just be
freaking flyers or things like that, people that they deal with frequently.
Well, no, like you could just, like, his energy, like everything was like, but I had been with him all day and I had seen like all the horrible stuff and the yelling and the, everything that went on that whole day. And then I'm also there with him when, his kids are calling and like they need stuff and the spouse is calling and like, so there's all this pressure. And then there's just one magical call where one person decides to talk back and I'm like, I would have lost it on you too, Like, you deserve to be called an idiot. And so when you're behind the scenes like that, you would see all that with them. And I thought, if people had all that perspective, I really think we could take down the temperature of this ongoing anti-law enforcement narrative. I believed that so much, and then it kind of got cut out from under me. Ultimately, I turned back to my social media, who I had been releasing these little snippets through the whole time I was shooting it, and I just told them, I said, they're not going to air it. The only way you're going to see this is if you go on the website. And so I just gunned that audience as much as I could. And sure enough, like, it was the highest rated thing on the website. And then the real insult to injury is after I think on the day I left, there was a plaque on my desk that they had submitted it without my knowing for an award. And it had won first place.
Oh, wow.
And so I just left it there. I said, I'm not taking that.
Wow.
Because it was everything I wanted it to be. And the officers were so happy about it. And so, like, that was enough.
Are you still friends with the officers?
Yeah, I sell some houses to them now.
Oh my gosh. Are they still in law enforcement or have they left?
No, a lot of them have left. A lot of them work in mortgages now. And
yep, I do business with a few of them, ex-Brunswick County undercover.
Yes, a lot of them. But that's not, when an officer leaves the police force, like, we just all lost. Because when you're with them, that job is so demanding and so brutal on you and your family and your mental health that I think the only person who wants to do that job is someone who feels called. Like, I feel that way about the military. Like, why would you want to do that? Like, there's something in you that says, I have to do that. And so for someone to step away from something that they feel so spiritually called to do, I can't hire that.
Right.
I can't, like, go find that again quickly. And so, like, we all lost out.
So what you're saying kind of echoes a buddy of ours that we had on the show back in the fall. He lives in South Africa, born and raised South Africa. And the whole country is just violence. Everything's falling apart. And all the guys that I know that are mutual friends with them are like, dude, just come to the U.S. Like, my company will hire you. Get your visa, come move to the U.S., bring your family here. And he's like, kind of want to, like, fix my country, man. Like, I kind of just want to stay
I'm
here.
invested here.
Yeah. And you're just like, I guess I don't have an argument then, because there's nothing, there's no amount of money, obviously. There's no job or career. Like, that's really what you want to do. How do you convince somebody otherwise? You can't.
Yeah.
So
That's a cool dude. If you're willing to stay, and if you could have it easier and you still choose the harder option. Like we can't replace that.
Yep. And I'm sure there's a lot of cops like that. There's probably a lot of veterans that become cops that are like that. But I can also tell you that there are a lot of guys in the military that are not like that at all.
No, and that's true. I think, and there's plenty of people that get into law enforcement that take the POPAT and the BLET, and then they get in their first fist fight and they're out. Yep. But that's every industry,
I would say though, I think that some of the people that do join for whatever other reason, like I was going into the Air Force, I got a DUI, so I wanted to do that.
Wow. I felt that for you.
But so I was going in no matter what, but I wasn't going in because I was like, this is my duty or whatever. I just didn't really know what else to do. And I didn't really want to go to college at that point. I didn't really want to do anything. And so I went in and joined. But then after the fact, I'm proud that I did it. I'm happy that I did it. I had some really horrific experiences. I have some bad injuries, but I also have a lot of really good friends and I have a lot of great ties now because of it. So it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like a fraternity.
Yeah.
Like you have those people all across the country and all across the world that you can reach out to for various things, but at risk of back injury and things like that for the rest of your life.
And death.
Well,
right.
yeah.
Imminent death.
Yeah.
Sure. That too.
Yeah. I meant to me, myself as I am now, not like the risk that I took during that time. But I was a medic, which was really funny. And I want to go back to your story, but just this quick snippet.
I didn't know you were a medic.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So when I signed up, I maxed out the ASVAB, and the recruiter's like, here you go. Just gave me the list of every MOS. They're like, pick whatever you want. Oh. So my 18 going on 19-year-old brain looked at bonuses. And at that time in 2007, bonuses were through the roof.
Yeah.
EOD was $100,000 for 6 years. So as an 18-year-old, I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
Cash now.
Yeah. My parents were like, I don't think you should do that. And they had whole long conversation. Do something you can do when you get out. Do something you can do when you get out. So, all right, took medic.
All that loving advice. Yeah. So terrible.
So $37,000 bonus instead of $100,000. And now I'm not doing what
you should have done EOD.
Yeah. So, I go through and I get out and just, I look back at it and I'm like, my parents wanted me to be safe. That's why they told me to pick medic. But there is no, other than being infantry, where you're always going to be on the front lines, there's no job as unsafe as being a medic. Because I can be anywhere from working in a hospital or a clinic to I could just be in a convoy with the infantry. And when you're in a convoy with the infantry, you're expected, as a medic, you're expected to know and understand their job as well as they do. Medics are expected to do the job of the unit that they're with. Until somebody's hurt or until you're training somebody how to administer care, you are that job.
Oh.
So if my parents had known that, maybe they would have let me do EOD.
Wow. So much for listening to them.
Yeah. But so going back to the story with the documentary and everything, do you own the rights to that? Like, can you release it on your own? Damn.
How long ago was this? 2016, you said?
2017 was when we had the meeting in his office.
Okay.
2018 was when it was over. But it's their equipment. They paid me for the time. And I mean, in a million years, there's no part of you when you work in news that is like, how do I get this material for myself and release it? Like, you work at a TV station.
Right.
There's some running assumption that it will go on TV.
Right.
Crazy. I know. But it was when I came in on Monday, and he told me all that, I knew that it was over then. But that was never the plan. Like, the plan was I was going to die there, and they were going to, put my likeness in bronze over my favorite parking spot.
Because you'd been there for 10 years at that point.
Yeah, but I really didn't want to leave. I mean, it was horrible pay. The hours sucked. Like, 99% of that job was horrible, but I could not see myself doing anything else. And I couldn't see not telling those stories. And it was the only portion of that career where I really felt like the work I did was making Wilmington better. I mean, I would get letters from, like, who writes handwritten letters anymore?
55 plus.
Besides pushy real estate agents. Yes. And people would write letters about, like, what was going on with their loved one who was addicted to heroin or drugs or, I mean, I went to a prostitute's baby shower. Like, I was just, like, so, I know. But, like, at the time, it made sense. It made sense at the time. I'm not going to tell that story. It was very nice.
I'm just wondering what kind of gifts are given at a prostitute baby shower.
I don't think everybody else knew.
Oh. Okay. That makes more sense. I was the
guest of honor in that regard. But, like, everything that I was doing was, I felt like kind of waking Wilmington up and, like, making people aware of these issues and things like that. And I felt like I was the only person who was willing to speak up for law enforcement. And that, you know, not in the Bible, but they call that, like, palace privilege. That, like, you take your position of privilege and, like, what do you do with it? And I felt like I had a lot of palace privilege working in local news. And I was like, what can I do with it? And, like, that's what I wanted to do with it. And then the day we had that conversation, I knew that was, I can't even explain it. It was like the tone, but it was like all of my life's blueprints just went to hell on that day. And so I spent the next year, like, unwinding that situation. Did
you start making plans for what was next in your life at that point?
I was trying to, but I never saw ahead of that. You know, to me, that was like, I was gonna finish this and then I was gonna do another documentary and, like, and I had just bought a house. I bought my first house.
Oh gosh.
And it was a 110-year-old nightmare that I was, like, renovating, and I just finished it. And so this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, this was not in the deck.
Right.
And so there was no plan B because I didn't want a plan B.
Right.
Like, this was supposed to be it. So it was kind of like, I've not been divorced, but it felt like a divorce of, like, unwinding. Because I don't, have you had corporate jobs? Either of you? Well,
other than, I guess, if you want to call it the military, with how everything's
corporate.
Controlled. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, hospital-ish, I guess, could be one. When I worked in the emergency
military,
department.
I think, is a good example. Like, your whole world is intertwined with their systems. Like, my healthcare had always come from my job.
Yep.
My phone came from my job. I had a take-home car. And all that stuff, you know, I, like, figuring out my own health insurance. Like, I didn't know how to do any of that because it was
a nightmare.
Yeah, it was always corporate. But the big loss was my relevancy. Like, I only knew how to introduce myself in Wilmington because from day one that I moved here, I was Casey Roman, pause, WECT News.
Is that why you went into real estate?
What, to get away from?
No.
I went to real estate because I had to pay my bills.
To be relevant and have signs with your face on it.
No, because I don't even put my face on my
Really?
signs. No, I don't do that. No.
I don't know how real estate agents advertise. I thought that's how they do it.
I'm sure they do. No, real estate agents take your veneers and you show them real big, and then you put like this.
Do you have veneers?
No. But I'm telling you, this is how you're supposed to do it. That's not how I do it.
You have to do like a third turn.
Yeah, and like this. And then you put some dopey slogan about how you make moving fun, which, as you know, is false. Not true. No, but that's also how TV people take goofy photos. So I can see why you would draw the line, but that wasn't why I went to real estate. No. But that was the big thing. Like, I had only come to Wilmington to work in news, and everyone knew me as the news lady. Like, if I walked into Walmart, someone would yell, "Hey, news lady," which I loved.
Was there any sort of transferable skill or ability or connection that you could have gotten, like, with the studios?
So in theory, what actually happened was I panicked. You know, I'm plan A through Z. Like, there's no family. There's no... Same thing?
No, we have a family calendar, and she has been panicking because I didn't have a set time for you to come on in the calendar. So she's been asking me for days and hours.
If I had known, I would have given it time.
It's fucking annoying. Don't tell me that we have a scheduled guest for Tuesday. Tuesday is entirely too broad.
I left that wide
Give me
open.
a time because I need to make sure to have all my work completed before we're doing this. I need to make sure
we're
to,
both getting yelled at right now.
I mean,
It's mostly my fault.
No. It's not at all. He he's the reason why we have a family calendar, and he refuses to actually use it. So everything that I keep is in my head. I don't need a family calendar.
In my defense, I do use it, but I have 4 competing calendars. And when something is added to the calendar that I didn't add, I don't think to go look, hey, is there something on Thursday? Now I do. I'm proactive. If I go to get my haircut and they're scheduling my next haircut, hey, can you do the 27th at 4 p.m.? I'll pull up my phone. No, I got school pickup. How about 6? Drop off for practice for one of the kids. How about the next day? All morning. Yeah, I'm good. So now I'm actually using it.
It's only taken him 3 years.
You gotta train him.
But there's random pop-up things, like she dropped off her car this morning, and I didn't know that because I didn't look at it, and I had no reason to think that something was added to the calendar. So,
anyways,
it's tough out there.
He digressed again. So back to you.
That's my specialty.
You were talking about corporate and having to start your life over, and
the relevancy, like that was
real estate.
Being in Wilmington and not being Casey Roman, WCT News, like that. I thought, well, who the hell is Casey? Like, I've only ever been here as the news lady. And so with that, like, I'm not important anymore to anybody if I'm not the news lady.
Right.
And that just obliterated my mental health. Like, whatever the tallest deep dive cliff off of sanity.
That was a year before COVID. So when everybody was having a deep dive on their mental health.
2 years. So 2018 was when, the year of 2018 was when everything went to hell.
Okay.
So it took me a full year to like unwind and get everything ready. And a part of me, I think, kept thinking like, they're going to come back and say, like, we're going to get back together.
Right.
And they didn't. But I got really sick and unwell, like, up here over the summer. And almost every day I would go into the office and print off a new resignation letter just in case, like, HR and the news director, like, had a meeting, like, that I could quit first and not be fired. And so it was, like, just every day of living like that. And I was back in general assignment, which is like chasing ambulances and fires and like stuff that I didn't really do.
Right.
And then my last big hurrah was during, not Katrina, what was Florence, Hurricane Florence. And I spent 2 weeks with the Charlotte Fire Department because I got stuck there, which I say it's Snow White and the 12 Ding Dongs. It was just like, they were so wonderful when I got down there. They taped up all the windows to make sure that I had privacy and like had my own shower time. And then like 24 hours in, all that was just, I'd wake up and there'd just be a face there. And it was like, are you going to make breakfast for yourself? Or like, what are you doing? Or like, do you want to go? I mean, so during those 2 weeks, every time we'd pull out of the fire station, we'd pass the Charlotte Ram dealership. And I remember seeing like the white cargo vans and thinking, oh, like that's what an RV is. Like it's just the cargo, like a Class B is what they're called. Yeah. Class B is just, it's that, but like with bells and whistles. And I said out loud on one of the rides, I was like, that's what I need. Like, I need a house where when we have a storm or when my life goes to hell, like, I can take my house with me. Because by that time, I had to sell the house because I knew I'd be losing my job. Oh. And so I thought that'd be perfect. Like, just I'll go wherever. And no one can take that away from me.
Right.
Because, like, I knew I had to sell the house because I couldn't make mortgage payments without a job. But, like, the van, like, that I could always have. And that was the first time I saw the van. And then, like, late at night when the guys would go to sleep, when we would have internet during the storm, I found, like, hashtag van life. And this was like a whole thing on the internet with these like people with man buns and ukuleles and a 3-legged shelter dog named Whiskey. And they lived in vans and it was like and they had beautiful vans and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like I'm gonna that.
So when did you buy your van?
I bought it a couple weeks after COVID. Okay. I went back and I remember driving it to the fire station and being like,
got your van.
Look what I got. And then being like, you're what? Okay. But I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. You know, I think on social media, people knew I was working on a van, But nobody had any idea about what was going on at the TV station. People knew I sold my house. They didn't know that I was essentially squatting in a vacant house at that point because I had nowhere to live. Like it was, when I said took the deepest dive,
my gosh.
I went from beautiful 2,000 square foot Queen Anne Victorian, down
What street
Abbey
was it
home.
on?
It was on Market, but I was not a prostitute.
No, I'm born and raised on Princess Street, so that's why I asked.
It was in Carolina Place.
Yeah.
And I had restored it like with.
Between what
Oh, it
blocks?
was so beautiful. 18th and 19th block.
Yeah.
We were neighbors.
Yeah. I'm right over on
you know
Princess
exactly.
Street.
But they're so beautiful. It's the Mansion District.
Yes.
And I love that house so much. But if my job wasn't there, like how was I going to afford a historic home?
Right.
So I was living in a vacant house, and I got the van, and I just started working on it. And I put my phone up on the dash, and I was like, well, all these hippies have a YouTube channel about their van build, and like I've done nothing but shoot and edit video for over a decade, so I'll have a YouTube channel too.
Right.
And I shot a terrible video about why I bought a ProMaster, and I put it on the internet. And like the next morning I wake up, and it's like Fuzzy Bunny 69 and like all these other names that I've never heard of have subscribed to you on YouTube. And I thought, all right, well, I'll do another one. And like very quickly because I was the Antichrist of the man bun. Like I was just the...
I hope you have chopped off more than one man bun in your lifetime.
It's like a whole culture of that scene, and I was the opposite of that. And so I kept working on it. And then around November a full year from that fateful meeting, my news director called me back in, and like we had not spoken, like very little contact. And I had my new resignation letter like holstered, ready to go. And he pushes some documents across the table, and I thought they were my termination papers. And he's like, hey, we haven't talked a lot this year, but like you've not been on a contract in a couple months, and like we can't do that, so here's a new contract. And I like the proverbial record scratch. Yep. And if I signed it, and I'd signed many media contracts by that point, like I don't have to go live in a van. I can go get another house. I'll have health insurance, a car, and of most importance, I'll still be Casey Roman, WECT News. Like everything in my
Except
world.
you no longer feel valued and appreciated at this point.
Except I don't have the thing that's actually precious to me, which is those stories. Like I'm not getting those back. That was not part of the deal.
Right.
It was like more fast churn and burn news. That's what I'd be doing. And I didn't sign it, and I pushed it across the table. And when I think back on that now, I'm like, well, that was ballsy because that was the easy thing to do is like to just keep your like that's what I had wanted to happen that whole year is to like let's just act like that never happened and like just keep on going. But I had a year without my work, without working with the officers, without documentaries, and I was like, well, you get what you tolerate, and if I sign that, I'm just going to tolerate more of what I don't want. And I didn't sign it, and I will never forget the look on his face, like, well, where are you going?
Yeah.
And that was the answer, was like, oh, I bought a cargo van. And in that final month at the station, like nobody knew what to do with me. I was like the dog in the house that was about to go over the Rainbow Bridge, and like nobody wanted. I mean, I really was like, because when people leave news, it's like they're going to a bigger station, or they're going national, or like they got a big PR job, and everyone was like, you just did 5 documentaries by yourself, and you're gonna go be homeless.
Congratulations.
Did everybody pity you?
No, they didn't know what to do. Like they just, and I don't think I told anybody until pretty right up to the end. And I didn't address it on social media, so like people would watch my stories for years, and I didn't really tell it. So one day on January 1st, I posted a video that I wasn't working in news, and I bought a cargo van, and I remember my girlfriend saying like, you'll be back in 3 weeks. And then on January 1st, 2019, that was it. I was done. And the first day of sleeping until like 2:00 in the afternoon was amazing. And then after that, I mean, honestly, that cargo van kind of saved my life, because I don't know if you experienced this leaving the military, but when you lose like your sense of who you are and what your label is, and my whole worth was packaged up in Casey Roman, WCT News. Like I had no idea who Casey was because I worked all the time. I loved it. And like I woke up on January 1st, like.
Well, I kind of went from being a medic in the Army to working as a medic in an emergency department and going to nursing school. So I never. It was a change of venue, just not. Yeah. So, but I never really conformed to like the military.
I'm shocked to hear that.
So before we talk about you going on your travels, why don't we circle back to how you two met?
Oh, it was. I don't even know if you remember this. Do you remember U.S. Med Express? They used to be on Oleander where Wooster and Dawson split right there. Stop you.
No.
That's it used to be a TV
It was obviously
studio.
very memorable
like
and
a tire
impressionable
store
for
now.
him, but not at all for you.
It's like a tire store now.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Wait,
yeah.
what year was this?
So around that time.
So maybe this is
17.
when you were no longer on your
was-
investigative pieces and you were
That's
put on to boring and you were just getting through the day.
Yeah. So I had
Really, lay it down easy for him, yeah.
I had reached out to the newsroom itself, like through the website or something, like submit a tip or whatever one of those forms is. It's so long ago at this point. And I think they gave me like a generic response or like a really delayed response or something like that. Basically, the dude was committing all kinds of fraud. And I was like, I was both covering my ass because I wasn't taking the fall for them. There were all kinds of HIPAA high-tech violations and all kinds of stuff that I was
This
trying
is
to...
coming back to me now, the HIPAA part.
Yeah, and so I added you as a friend on Facebook so that I could message you and send over the stuff to you. And I don't remember what all transpired. I think you were like, I'll look into it or something. And nothing like, I don't think anything came of it, but it also lines up with you not really getting to do what you wanted to do.
I probably couldn't
So,
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was back to the grind.
Yeah. So that was, other than that, like we never, I mean, other than like interacting on posts and stuff like that, we never like
Because I asked him before you came over, I said, well, how did you guys meet? Because I've obviously never met
That's how a lot of
you.
people meet is through social media now. I mean, there's people online that I see now in the grocery store, and I'm like, oh my, like, I feel like I know you. I don't, but like, I do. But you had asked me, didn't I have skills? And the part that I left out is I did start a formal job search, and it was a train wreck. It was horrible.
Jobs in
Because-
Wilmington are terrible.
No, but I had an extra level of awful because I would go, like I went to marketing companies and like things where I thought I could use my video skills with. And I would get in there and they're like, you're the prostitution lady. And yes, I am. Or someone would recognize, they'd hear my voice and they would know my voice and they'd be like, heroin, or like, and that kept happening over and over again. And so I was downgrading like where I could get a job because nobody took me seriously. They were like, you're not going to leave. Like, you're Casey Roman. Like, you're not going to leave the team. You don't want to work. Or they'd say, you're going to be bored. And I'm like, if a paycheck comes every 2 weeks, I promise you, I'm going to figure out a way to not be bored. And then the last one I tried was Lowe's hardware.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll never forget, like, she looked at my resume and the top line of my resume said investigative reporter. And she's like, you want to work in hardware?
To be a
And I
cashier
said,
or like.
I didn't care. I would have cleaned the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
And she said, I don't see any
correlation.
And I was like, no, I
here.
just finished renovating my house. Like, I can tell you all about all these things. But, like, I just also happen to investigate people, like, on the side for fun. Like, it's not, like, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was terrible. Wilmington's job market is abysmal anyway. Like, add on to it a layer of being the prostitution lady, and it's like, it's really challenging.
Speaking of prostitution, did you work on the escorting case that was the
Yes
huge
and
bust
no.
like a year and a half ago at this point?
Yeah, so he, I forget his name, the mate, Todd. One of the ops that we did involved him and some of his girls, and I'll say they came this close. And
back in the 2017 era,
back when I was working on the prostitution documentary, and but it fell through, and it was so hard to get him because he was so protected by those girls. And I know that probably sounds like it doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes sense.
But when you're the provider of their work, their dope, their alcohol, their everything, they circled around him like an iron shield. And eventually, I'm thrilled to death that it's not just him. Like, he's the poster child, but it's all over the place. And oddly enough, in the past couple of years, like, we've sort of normalized it with just the proclivity of seeing it on the internet. And like, there's, now there's OnlyFans and like all kinds of ways that you can just do different derivatives of essentially a similar transaction. So, yeah,
I think the main difference is when you're controlling that unless you work for Andrew Tate or whatever he was doing, they don't typically take your passport and hold you hostage and put you in a shack or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a spectrum and that's why I get really irritated when, after I did that documentary, I was asked to speak at a lot of human trafficking. And I would always get uninvited because I would say, well, if you want to talk about the human trafficking girls, then you should also be talking about the girl who's on Craigslist. Like, the sympathy, because a lot of people think that human trafficking is the varsity cheerleader who gets ripped out of the stadium and chained to a radiator and dragged around the country. But that's not really how that happens more often. She is on drugs, or she gets on drugs with a boyfriend, and then like it spirals and it becomes, but the girl who's on, Backpage really isn't a thing anymore, but the girl who's selling herself on the internet could go to jail, find herself desperate, and then be pimped or trafficked tomorrow, and then be back to working with herself. Like, it's such a fluid. So, when people just feel this, like, let's have fundraisers for the human trafficking, I'm like, it's not this big. It's like, it's huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of that. And so it's in different measures.
So it's being here in general, and I can make several analogies about this, even just talking about policing and sitting in this house. There could be a murder going on right now somewhere in Wilmington, and we just wouldn't know until we turn it on, because it doesn't happen enough, and it's not close to you. So you never actually really feel connected, other than you're like...
Until her protege is reporting on it at the 11 o'clock news.
Right.
But for the prostitution thing, you always hear people talking about it, and there's always people that are super, super invested in it, and I don't even know how to explain it, but when I was in Korea, it was like a completely normal thing there for them to bring in girls from the Philippines and everywhere else, and that's what they did. They would bring them in, and they would say, you're going to work in this bar, and they call them juicy girls. And essentially what they were supposed to do is they were supposed to get soldiers and Marines and airmen and everybody else to buy these watered down drinks, because that gave you their time. They could come sit and hang out with you, and they would kind of form these relationships. So there's a lot of people here in the U.S. now because of that, because they work their way in. But they're there because they want to make money to send back to their family.
Yeah. But
they literally live in an apartment above the bar that they work in with like 20 other girls. And I never feel that when I'm here, because you can't it's not as obvious here, I guess is what I should say.
We would go, there's the massage parlors. Like, we all know what goes on, and not like your legitimate license, but and I remember one of the narcotics officers, we drove behind the back of it at like 2:00 in the morning. And he said, just wait. And so we watched like the shop shut down, the lights go out, and then we're still sitting there. I'm like, this is the most boring show ever. Like, why are we here? And he said, have you not noticed anything? And I said, no. And this is horrible video. Like, let's go get in a fight somewhere. Come on. And he said, you didn't notice that nobody left. So all the women that work in there, they never left. Like, there were no cars back there. Nobody went out the front door. Nobody went out the back door, because they don't leave. They never leave those buildings. I will get visibly angry when I hear someone say like, oh, we should just legalize it. I'm like, oh yeah, because then like all the flowers will grow and all the pimps and all the traffickers and all that, they're gonna go get their EIN number and start filing their taxes. And you are so smart. That's all we needed to do. Yeah, but it's you drive by it all the time, and that's what was so interesting about that work was that nobody thinks that this stuff goes on in Wilmington, but it goes on everywhere. Right. I mean, when we would do ops, Brunswick County put up one picture of one female, I think on Craigslist, and we had 3 rooms. We had the takedown room, the room where everyone's staged to like run through the door, and then the arrestor or the holding room where like once they got arrested, they would go. We had so many men show up at one time that they had to stage them in the Walmart parking lot because like we couldn't get them through enough. And then my favorite part was that as the day wore on, wives were calling the sheriff's office saying, my husband is missing. My husband is, and they're like, no.
Andrew, I will cut your balls off.
He's fine. I'm not working there anymore. I'm not encouraging
Well, I was one of the only people that never... Because, I mean, some of them were just like, dude, I just want to go to the bar. There's not a bar that you can go to that didn't have it. Mm-hmm. So if you just wanted to go out and play pool and hang out with the guys or whatever, or just get drinks or even get food, there's nowhere that you could go without getting on the train and going somewhere else, which that required other permissions, leave or pass or whatever. You can't be gone overnight. At that time, we weren't allowed anything overnight. We had to be back on post. There was no exception. So to go from something like that where I know what's happening and I can actively avoid it, I can literally go do anything else. We had Korean soldiers that worked directly with us. So they were like live-in translators. They literally lived in the barracks with us. They did our jobs with us. So I'd be like, hey, take me somewhere cool. So for a year, I literally just adventured around South Korea. I've been...
With your guides.
Yeah. And for free. I didn't have to pay anybody to do it. Just ride the train, buy some food, and hang out, whatever. But... yeah, like there, you don't have an option. So some of them, because they don't have an option either for a female companion of any kind, especially Camp Casey where we were up in the DMZ, there's not very many females that are stationed there. So you don't, they get kind of desperate and they're like, oh, this girl really likes me. You're like, I promise you she doesn't.
No.
That's why you get the safety brief every Friday. Mm-hmm. They do not love you. They don't want anything but your money. They might want a green card. They might want to marry you, but they don't actually love you. And so then to come here, I guess I would say it desensitized me because it was in my face all the time. And I come here and people talk about it, I'm like, but really? Is it? Like, is it?
Yeah.
And that's not. Yeah.
It's different.
So unless you're actively looking for it or know the people involved in it,
you wouldn't.
So, and I think that also makes it a hard sell for other than people that always are dramatic about things like, oh my God, did you hear that crime that happened 3 cities away? That could happen here tomorrow. Sure, it could. It could happen anywhere, anytime. But it's hard to tell people that something is literally happening here, and they're like, I can walk outside, I don't see it, so I don't believe you.
Yeah, but that's what made that work so rewarding. Was like, here, everybody.
Yeah, exposed. Oops.
I'm sure the marketing for the city of Wilmington really appreciated my tenure. You're welcome.
It didn't seem to negatively impact it. It's still the #1 city to move to.
That is true. And I joke with when people come in from out of state, I'm like, I can't really go into detail, but I can describe the good and the bad. And like, if you want to go on an overdose tour.
Oh my God.
I know these neighborhoods at a level that, like, I'm going to go ahead and say that most agents don't, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Have you put a house on the market or sold a house that you had been to for a story?
Yes, but not for bad reasons. Like, if I had met them through news and then ended up selling
No. I mean, like, on the buyer side. Like, going in and saying, oh, I came here one time with the police for...
Okay. No, I would totally remember. But I was mostly like out on the street, not so much, I had a very unique experience in news here. That's for sure.
It seems like the news around here, the very few times that I've like actually watched it on TV, not just like a clip on somebody sharing on social media, but But the very few times, like my grandparents leave their TV on, just with it on in the background. And when I've been at their house, I listen. I'm like, these people are so boring.
Well, you can't keep it alive anymore. I mean, so 2008, the recession, when I started in news, if your bread and butter is commercials, which it is, when the recession hit, well, nobody's buying commercials, and it was really cars. Like car dealership commercials was their lifeline. Well, once that stopped, then there was no. So it used to be that in a news like team, you'd have your live truck operator, you'd have a producer, a reporter, and a videographer, your camera guy. So that was a whole team. And then they pulled off the live truck operator, and then they pulled off the producer. So then it was a reporter and a videographer. Well, when I started in the recession, then the term one-man band came to be, which we can't say anymore because it says man. And it's going to offend somebody. So now they're called multimedia journalists.
Okay.
So it means you, the reporter, you find the story, line up the interviews, you shoot all the video yourself. You write it, you edit it, you put on your makeup, you set up your own. The live trucks are not a thing anymore. It's a backpack, and you set up the backpack and it connects to a satellite. And I know that that's probably, from a cost savings perspective, fantastic. But I will tell you, as a paparazzi, that when you're out in the wilderness and you're trying to play news lady, what does everyone do when they see a live report? They act like an idiot.
Yep.
They can't wait to get, or like touch you, or like, and so it's for safety reasons, for you trying to focus here when you're, and this is a terrible example, but if you remember the reporter that went nuts, I think it was in Virginia, and shot his 2 coworkers on live TV.
What?
It happened a couple years ago.
I didn't know anything about this.
And he did it during the morning show, and like people kept, because he came up, and he stayed there for a little while, and then he shot both of them and killed them on live TV. And I remember hearing people say, like, how could they not have seen that he was holding? It's because when you have that in your ear and you're listening to, like, news commands, and you're trying to talk live and not sound like an idiot or so boring, you're, like, zoned in, and so you're not aware of all this. So they've gotten rid of the people. They've gotten rid of the support. You do everything yourself. And then they've added more shows. So when Oprah left, then they added a 4 o'clock show, and then they add 7 o'clock, and then they add a 7 a.m., and they add all this news, but they're not adding more people.
Gotcha.
And so newsrooms across the country. So today, in addition to real estate, I also train law enforcement on media relations. And when I go to these conferences, we do a whole segment on the depleted newsroom. Like there's not enough people. Like, I'm sure you've noticed if you watched it all, like they run the same story 8 times. Yeah. Or now the new thing is like, heaven forbid, have a camera. Like the reporters just do selfie videos.
Oh my.
And like there's just not enough support in those newsrooms because information travels so fast because we all have a cell phone. So who the hell is watching at 6?
Yep.
It's already been all over everything. Right. By the time that it happened, you know, they've just not changed that medium. So in some ways, like I got out at kind of the right time, but that was not the plan. And it has changed a lot. You know, and sometimes I'll watch it and I'm like, surely we weren't that bad. Like, surely.
See, I don't know about the people in the field, but like the actual anchors that are presenting or telling, like, here's what's coming up next or whatever. Just like, it was just flat and monotone.
It's a model they haven't changed since 1950. You know, the show opens with some garish graphic, swish, 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 music. And then slow push into 2 people at a desk who are wearing a suit. Nobody wears suits anymore. Even when jobs that you should wear a suit, nobody wears a suit. And then there's like graphic over the shoulder, and then awkward crosstalk with the anchorman or the weatherman. And then the progression is like, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. So all your people who died stories up top. And then you finish off with a dumb animal segment. It's called the kicker. And that's rinse, repeat.
Yep.
But now don't do it for 1 show, do it for like 7 shows. And so as a reporter, you know, you'd have to, your meetings would end at like 10:30. You'd have to go shoot and edit everything by like 3 and then be ready at 4. Well, there's no fact checking on that schedule.
Right.
You can't.
Yep.
Not if you got to drive to Columbus County and then drive here and answer calls and all. Like, you're not.
Right.
You're not. And so that's where the evolution of fluff gets, because if I know that I can show up to a ribbon cutting and I only have to move 3 feet to get all my video and everybody's happy and nobody's going to touch me, great. Like, I'll go do that. Like, why would I extend myself to go do the hard stuff when the hard stuff is going to kill me?
And it kind of seems like if you think about like the Mr. Beast and stuff like that on social media and YouTube specifically right now, everything is very, very fast paced. They're like, I think they said every 6 seconds or something like that, they changed camera angle or view or whatever. So if you know that that's a template that both keeps people's attention and gets the entire story across,
You should learn something.
and potentially sets you up for a follow-up, because sometimes I'll watch something like that. I'm like, that can't be like what really happened, right? That can't be. So I'll go and find the full documentary to figure out. So it's like my teaser basically. And it seems like the missed opportunity with mainstream media, mainstream news, is that they could reduce the length of their actual news segments, make it faster paced, and then sell the remaining time to a syndicated show or something.
Or I always thought it'd be interesting. Like, to me, the coolest stuff of the whole news day was, when we'd all the reporters would circle up and, like, some rip off their eyelashes and take off your shoes and like the behind the scenes, stuff that happened behind the scenes, and like doing live interviews like that, because that was the stuff that was really interesting. Like, what happened to you today? Well, someone threw a bottle at me. Okay, well, what happened to you today?
Yeah.
Like, that just like made the whole story. But they've stuck to that model. Media is very corporate, and I was an outliner. And that it's not that they didn't want the documentaries, it's that they wanted the documentaries, but like, could you also please go get this fatal fire that happened at 9, and then like there's a pet adoption event, so like, could you also go get that? And like, it was sort of like Cinderella, and when you're done with all this bullshit, then you can go do real news.
Gotcha.
And that was a trade that I didn't want to make,
So you packed up your van, and is that when you started writing, or?
No. So let's see. I finished. That's the not for resale version, and that's my favorite version because that's the first copy they give you. Ooh, did you?
Good job.
Okay.
I set something off.
Oh no.
There we go. It was the crickets.
Rough.
Sorry.
No, but that's when you publish a book. That's the first copy they give you that has all the flaws on it, and that's my favorite one because that's like before it got too much polish.
Is there a difference between this and a galley copy? Is that what it's called?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things were fixed in it before the final came out. But so let's see. So I worked on the van until February of 2019. And while that work was happening, like, I got over the anger of the job falling apart, and like, every day I would look at that van and I think, like, what am I doing with this? Because all the energy of like buying it and getting the initial stuff, and I was finishing it, but like I had lost the pain and like the mourning of all my blueprints for life ending. And so that fervor wasn't there anymore. And so we had one day in February where it was like 60 degrees and the sun came out. And I was like, if I don't leave now, I'm never going to leave. Like, I'm just going to go. Mm-hmm. And I gave myself 3 weeks because that's what my girlfriends thought that I would last. They were like, you're only going to last 3 weeks. There's no shower on board. Mm-hmm. The toilet was a glorified plastic bucket that I had decorated.
Okay.
Because I'm not trashy.
Okay.
I put glitter on it.
Okay.
You have the, oh my gosh, I've seen one of these before. It's got like a little like chopper thing, it like chops your poop as you put it.
Oh no, it wasn't that fancy. It was a portable camping toilet.
Okay.
So like quite literally bucket seat. That was all I had, but I did paint it and embellish it, and it was pretty. And the internet loved it. The internet thought, like, if I do nothing else in life, that is all I needed to do. But I finished the whole thing. So bed, there was some power, but not a lot. I was running off the alternator onto batteries. And so everyone was like, and I didn't cut any windows in it because it was freezing cold. And so I didn't want to die of, freezing to death in a van. So 3 weeks, that was what I gave myself. And I was like, if I disappear for 3 weeks, when I come back, like by that time, people will know that I've left WCT. Then I can go get a job with like one of these companies. And like, I'll just be Casey and it'll be fine. And so I left, and the first 2 weeks were really tough because I just assumed that the whole world knew that I was in there. The truth is, nobody cared.
Right. Where did you go first?
My first day was the first stop was, what's the small town in South Carolina, just south of us? Not
Florence?
Myrtle Beach.
Oh, Little River?
No, go inland. It's not Clayton. It's Wilmington light. I mean, it's exactly like Wilmington, but it's just a teeny tiny town. And I remember, like, that was the first time I left the van, and I secured that van like I was in Baghdad. I just thought everyone, because I went from a 2,000 square foot house to a cargo van.
Right.
So the only thing I had left in this world, like, and we joke about, like, you see homeless people pushing the cart. That was my cart. Because that's all you have.
Right.
And so to separate with it, was I couldn't leave the van, and I was like double locking things, but I'm in like this cute little southern town, and I was terrified. And I went to Georgetown, South Carolina, my first night, and I found a park, and I pulled in, and I was too afraid to use the Coleman camping stove because it had propane, and I'm like, I'm gonna blow up in here, like I'm gonna die in this van. And I'm calling the firefighters in Shiloh, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And a blue lights flash in the mirror, and the guy pulls up, and he's like, you can't sleep here. It's a public park. So I ended up sleeping at Walmart.
Oh my gosh.
I felt like such a failure because in #van life, they sleep in all these beautiful locations. Right. And there's like the mountain vista and the beach, and it's my first day.
And you're sleeping in fucking Walmart parking lot.
Walmart in Georgetown, South Carolina. But the most beautiful thing, like, that officer was so good to me, and he was like, I don't know what you're doing or why, but if you go sleep in that Walmart, I patrol that. Mm-hmm. And like, I woke up all night long. I was every noise, because there's like 2 inches between you and the rest of the world, and you're not used to that. And I would open up the window, and like throughout most of the night, there was his car like right over there. He was so good. And then after about 2 weeks, I finally realized that people did know that I was in there and did not care. And then by the end of what became almost 8 months, I would have cooked breakfast on your front yard. Like, I did not give a damn. At the end of that 8 months, I was walking into Walmart with like flip-flops, my Tinkerbell bathrobe, and my hair up in like a towel, and brushing my teeth in the bathroom, and like nobody said anything. And I have such an allegiance to Walmart after that, because Walmart ended up being the safest place for me to sleep. The only times where I like navigated off grid to like find those beautiful locations were when I had safety issues.
Okay.
Walmart, they're there to do drugs in the parking lot, buy stuff in the store. Like, the truckers were wonderful to me. I would like wiggle the van in between 2 18-wheelers, and nobody ever messed with me, or like, I felt so much better at Walmart. So today, I'm not poor anymore, and I run a great business, and I don't have to shop at Walmart, but like, I am at Walmart. I will bleed blue, because that store like was my home for 8 months all around the country.
How many states did you go to?
I don't know how many states I went to. I ended up driving about 12,500 miles. Mm-hmm. And so I got down to Florida, and most of that route I knew, because I think all of us who live around here, like, you've done Charleston, Savannah, like, you've done all those. And then in Florida was when Winter Storm Scott hit. So, like, the whole country was frozen, very much like tonight. Mm-hmm. And I'm freezing in this van, and the storm passed, and I was at the beach in Florida, and it was so cold that day, and I thought, and that was when I hit 3 weeks. Was when I got to Florida. And I was like, well, I've made it. Mm-hmm. Like, I did everything that I thought that I was going to do, and I can drive home now, and like, I've accomplished this, and I can sell it, and I'll just go get my job. But there was no job waiting for me back in Wilmington. There was just that vacant house. Mm-hmm. And I thought, or, I could turn right and go west. And at that time, I had enough traction on YouTube that I was actually earning money.
Oh, wow.
Not much, but like enough to, and people on YouTube were so good to me. Like they like, I would get like, you know, a Venmo or PayPal, and someone would be like, you know, here's for groceries or like something. And in exchange, they got to watch me have a mental breakdown on Almost Live TV. Like that.
Do you still have a channel up? That they can go subscribe and you can say it right now?
Yeah, it's just my name, Casey Roman.
Casey Roman.
That's it. I was not very creative with what I did, but it's all up there. And so that's what I turned the other way, and I started heading towards Texas. And then Texas was the new goal because I had never been to Texas.
Okay.
I'm like, if I get to Texas, then I can turn around and go home. And I got to Texas. And while I was in Texas, I got a text message from the owner of the house that was empty, that he was basically letting me sleep on the floor in there. And he said, hey, like, I have to rent out the house. So at that point, I had nothing to come back to.
Right.
Like the whole time, at least there was an address where if I wanted to come back, like, and that was very reassuring. Like, if this gets to be too much, you can at least go back to that address. But in Texas, once that was gone, there was no job, no house, no, and that you'd think that would feel liberating in some way because like, okay, I'm earning money doing this and I could just keep doing it. But when the cord is cut and there's literally nowhere that's home,
Just fear.
That wasn't a great day. I felt like I really didn't have a home anymore. Like now the van is not just this journey to erase my former image and like try to salvage my brain from depression. It was like, this is it. So from Texas, I went up to all through the Midwest, and now I'm getting braver as I'm going. Like, you know, my balls are getting bigger as I stay in this van more. And I decide I'm going to go to Gary, Indiana.
Oh my God, the murder capital of the United States?
Yeah, and
why would you go to Gary, Indiana?
Because of that. Because I thought, it surely can't be that bad.
If I can survive all of America, then I can survive Gary,
it can't
Indiana.
be that bad.
That's such a white girl concept.
No. I should have adopted a pit bull while I was there. I should have gone to Gary, adopted a pit bull, named it Samantha, and taken it in the van. No, I did. I drove into Gary. And the irony of that is I've met this guy who was like worked in the government in Gary.
Okay.
Because I went to find a government official, like surely the only person that you can trust. That was so silly
No.
to say. And he ended up being my safety issue.
Of course.
And when I got rid of him, I then went to the City Methodist Church, which if you're into photography at all, it's like, it's where you become a photographer. Like breaking into the City Methodist Church, it's crumbling in on itself. It's in one of the worst neighborhoods in Gary. But like if you get in there and you photograph it, like there's some serious street cred. And I'm like, I have to go do this. And I get in there and like there's a group of like 6 guys who look like they are fresh out of whatever federal prison. And I'm like, well, here's where
you die.
They're gonna find my body. And I thought of negotiating, like, I want the SD card. But like you can have the camera, but I want the SD card.
Right.
And like I need the van. Like, what can we do here where I don't die, but, like, you get something? We ended up shooting a rap video together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's also on the internet. Yeah. They were wonderful.
You
they
just filmed it or you were in it?
They were, I mean, I really thought that I was going to, like, they came around the corner and, like, the church is all dark inside because so much of it is collapsed. And I had no way to get out fast. And I was dressed appropriately. So I had on Costco leggings and, like, a pink sweatshirt. And
you really blended in.
So I looked ready to rumble. And I had a knife, but it wasn't on me because I had forgotten. And they came around the corner, and I mean, I had that like something's gonna happen here. And they said, yeah, we've cleared it. Like, if you want to go check it, like we've cased it, like there's nobody here if you want to go run around. And then I just didn't say anything because I was so afraid. And they put down all their stuff. And I thought the bags were full of things to kill me with. Because surely they were waiting for me to arrive.
Right.
Like, it's all about me, right? And they pulled out cameras that were so much nicer than mine.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God, that's whatever the hell it was. And they said, yeah, we're shooting a rap video. Do you want to shoot it? And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like happy as a pig in shit. I was just thrilled to death that I'd made these new friends in Gary, and we shot this whole video, and like they ended up releasing it and like didn't use any of my footage because it wasn't.
Oh man, I was hoping you were going to say that you were on their credit roll.
No, I wasn't. I'm not a rap girl. But I went to Gary and then went to Detroit and spent like 2 weeks in Detroit. And then all through the Rust Belt, which, you know, if ever I hear a politician say, we're not going to leave an American behind, I'm like, you're right. You left a whole section of the country behind. And then after Buffalo, I thought, I've never seen a moose. So I'm going to go see a moose. I'm going to go find a moose. I drove all the way up to Maine to find a moose. Zero mooses. No moose. No moose. I met plenty of Maine State Highway patrolmen who were like, what are you doing? Like, are you broken down? Because there's signs in Maine that show a moose. And I was like, this is perfect.
Oh,
like,
I'm just going to stand here and wait for the moose.
This is where they must gather. And he's like, no, like if this is where they cross and if you hit it, it will kill you.
Right.
It'll crush your car. And I'm like,
it's a warning to you as a driver.
Sir, I'm very good with animals. Like, thank you for your service. I'm not leaving anywhere. I'm staying right here. Saw no moose. And then coming down the backside was when the PIO at WPD, the public information officer, she left and the officers were messaging me like, hey, there's a job opening. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, now it all makes sense. Like I had to leave the station and then have this journey. And like, now my dream job is open. I can go back and work with the officers and like tell their story and blah, blah, blah. And so I start really picking up the pace to get home so I can like step into my role.
It's only like 20 hours from here.
Yeah, but like I was good at that point. And then around Massachusetts, I got an email that I didn't get the job.
Oh no!
But I had used, and I'm almost done with my full circle here. But to practice for the interview, I read, and you might have read it, Chris Voss's book, "Never Split the Difference." Have you ever read it?
I don't know who that is.
Your job, you might really like it. He's a former FBI hostage negotiator. And so he teaches you like how...
Yes, insurance and hostage negotiation makes
it's a very good combination. But I wanted to like learn how officers talked like within themselves. And I was like, that would be perfect. So I'm reading this book about negotiation to like prepare for my interview. I find out I didn't get the job. My brain says, you're right. That was too small, Casey. What you should be doing is you should go work for the FBI.
Okay.
I went to Charlotte, North Carolina. I took the FBI test. I did not pass it. And then I said, I think it's time for you to go home now. And so from Charlotte, after failing out of the FBI, I said, I think
not
it's
everybody
time
can
to go
say
back.
that.
Yeah. And so I came back, and that was actually the hardest part of the trip because everything's an adventure when you're somewhere new and exciting and you're a stranger. And,
you didn't want to be in Charlotte anyways.
well, but now I'm back in Wilmington, and now I'm sleeping at the Lowe's that didn't give me a job.
Aww.
And
did you try again there?
No. At that point, like I had gotten a lot of video work from people watching my YouTube channel and like hiring me to do video.
Okay.
And so the van at that point, it was not working because it had no windows. It was so damn hot in the summer. And so I sold the van and I bought a fifth wheel.
Okay.
A 40-foot big mamma jamma. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep driving because I have no plans in life and nothing is coming together.
Right.
And then COVID hit.
And then everything shut down.
And so I had to live in an RV for all of... When people say quarantine was tough, and I'm like, was it? Because
quarantine in an RV.
I was stuck in an RV that wasn't hooked up to power. So like, tell me how bad yours was. But when during COVID, when I was stuck in that RV, I went into like an RV, kind of like the check-in place, and I printed off a list of essential workers. And I said, I've lost everything twice. Like, I lost my TV career, then I built it back with YouTube, and now I was getting all this video work, and now I can't do video work because no one wants to be within 6 feet of each other.
Right.
So I'm going to pick something off this list, and like, I'm not going to let it happen that 3 times in a very short amount of time I lose everything.
So what did you pick?
Real estate.
The real estate is an essential worker?
We were still showing homes. because people had to close homes.
I had no idea that real estate was on that list.
So
I think of nurses, doctors, police officers, teachers.
You've learned a lot in this. I get the list, and I'm going down the list, and it's like sanitation worker, trash. No, I'm not doing that. And then it was like plumber, electrician, like all the trades, and I thought, well, I'm not doing that. And then that was the only thing that like I could actually leverage my video and photography and social media on.
I'm shocked.
And you were still
real
to
estate
show
was
homes.
on the list.
It was. So I studied for 30 days and I passed the test, and now I'm sitting in your living room.
And you entered the real estate market at the right time. That was right when everything was booming.
I did. So that part was really good. But like, now real estate's really different. Like
Right.
the marketplace is different. But I think having gone through all that the past couple years, like now when I see a storm, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is not going to be as bad as, and also like having gone from having so much to so little, I don't get as afraid. Like when they furlough the government and people are like, well, we can't, like we're living paycheck to paycheck, but they've only been out one paycheck. And I think that's got to be a really scary way to live.
Yep.
If like if you're one paycheck away from, and so I think the blessing of what I went through is I'm like, well, you can't hurt me. Like I have a lot now, but you can take that away from me, and like I'm still gonna be fine, and I'm probably gonna have a good time. And there's always Walmart.
And you are brave enough to be able to just start over again if you have to.
Yeah, the problem when I've done some pretty big speaking events about the book and this whole thing, and I remember a lady raised her hand and she was like, your story reminds me of the phoenix, of like rising from the ashes. And I said, yeah, I've had a lot of that in my life. I don't recommend it because the problem with being the phoenix is you're always on fire.
Yep.
Right.
And like everyone likes the rising up part, and the comeback kid is really exciting, but like you can't have a comeback without a setback, and people forget that like that's how you got the comeback, and like
Right.
that part sucks so bad.
When did you start writing your book?
So about a year after I got back.
Okay.
There were so many stories, and since you both work in like a media space, you probably see the same thing. I would have these amazing experiences out on the road. Like when I helped birth a baby cow, and I didn't do shit. The farmer stayed in her rear and like did the real work. I stayed at her head and I told her she was so pretty and that she didn't need that bowl and she was gonna be a good mom, and like I'm just useless up at the front. But like staying at that farm in Buffalo and like the cow being born and all that, and I did this whole video on it. Or like I went to St. Jude's Hospital and like met the kids, and like I did a whole video on that, and like the view count was bottom of the barrel. But when something bad happened to me, the view count was up here. So when Casey's, when the electric in my van fried itself, up here. When someone, when there was like a safety issue and I thought I was in danger, up here. And I think we've seen that a lot, like progress, where you have to hype the horror to stay relevant on the internet.
Right.
And so you've got these influencers like making shit up
Right.
just to maintain some level of excitement. So that stuff got rewarded, and your income on those platforms is tied to your view count.
Right.
So I think people learn really quickly, like if you want to make any money, you need to hype the horror.
Yep.
So I'd had all these amazing stories about small town America and these people in little towns that I met that like nobody's ever going to meet. And they were great stories. And I was like, I don't think YouTube is the right space for them. I'm going to write a book. And I thought, it's only going to take me 3 weeks. For some reason, that's my number. It's only going to take me 3 weeks to write this book because I lived it. Like I was there for
Right.
every stitch of it. And I have my videos and I have photos. A year later, like grueling work, a year later. And during that year, you're supposed to start reaching out to agents and publishers. So I start reaching out to agents, and obviously I think that I'm fantastic. And I have something of a proof of concept for this because I have the YouTube channel. And nobody wanted it.
Really?
For a couple reasons. They didn't want the pro-law enforcement discussion.
Okay.
They said I needed a trigger warning, which I thought was an ironic use of language.
Yep.
They said that they felt like the audience for my book was not accepting of a pro-law enforcement narrative.
Okay.
The book is not about law enforcement, but you can't understand how I got into a cargo van unless you understand the mechanism by which I got there, which happens to involve law enforcement. Right. So they didn't want that. And then they really didn't want Chapter 5. And Chapter 5 is when I have a very frank discussion about suicide and like dealing with suicidal thoughts when you're in that deep of a hole. And they didn't want that. And so it got to a point with like agents and publishers where it was like, well, do you want your book published, Casey, or do you want Chapter 5? Like, pick. And so I took it out, and a couple weeks later, my dad committed suicide. And then shortly after that, a coworker committed suicide. And then shortly after that, a friend committed suicide. And so I put it back. And I was like, I don't care what this... Like, that in 2024, 2020, even like that we still have such a big problem acting like suicide doesn't happen is absurd. And so I put it back, and it cost me, you know, all the glitz and glamour of big publication. But I had learned from the whole 24-hour PD experience was that if I just turned back to the people who have been supporting me the whole time, I had that whole YouTube channel. I didn't really need...
Yeah.
So did you self-publish, or?
I did a hybrid, which is like there's a publishing company, but you have to front the money to get it published. So when you're with a big 5 publisher, they do everything, but they also control everything. So you don't pick the cover, you don't pick the title, they can change any of the content. So you lose your whole story, and then you make like 3 cents on every book. So with the way I did it, I went through all the steps of publishing, all the editing, just to make that cover was 8,000 decisions. It's amazing what it takes to publish a book. But I got to keep the money that was earned. It paid me back for what I invested. But it's a brutal... Like, I knew there was gatekeeping in media because I worked in media, but the publishing world is like...
But you were able to preserve your identity and the story behind what you wanted to bring to the table.
I didn't have to change anything.
It was worth it.
Yeah, I kept it as it is. And there was like, and they also had a big issue with my chapter titles, which if I can find a couple of these. One moment. Let's see.
I'm excited for this.
A proper hoe bath near death row. Like, that was not popular with... But that's... I'm going to use that as the title of the episode. I mean, there was many of... let me just see if I can find any. I think it gets more unhinged as... Life's major disappointments include Plymouth Rock. Like, possibly insulting to the foundation of America. But you know, all kinds of stuff like that. Like they didn't want any of this.
So a lot of this, and I mean, this is kind of everything these days. You know, you get like movies that have been book adaptations, and they're like, it's not true to the book, and people argue about that. But it seems like even going from the story that's in your head or what really happened to you in real life, and then getting that into the book, you have that same hurdle of getting what really happened into the book, and then going from book to adaptation, if that were to happen one day, obviously it's going to get gutted and carved out again. But we have a couple of friends. So I've worked on marketing campaigns for some pretty big books. 3 are New York Times bestsellers.
Wow.
I'm not like taking credit for that.
But you're still a part of that.
Yeah. So, but we've talked with a couple people recently. Nicholas Irving, you might not know who he is. Reaper 33.
That's familiar.
He said that when he did his first book, he went through the regular publishing route, and they basically gutted. They told him he couldn't tell this. He had to change the story and make it so it was all about him. He was the central character, but he wanted his spotter to be part of the story, and they completely changed the story. So he was like, from then on, all of the rest of my books I'm self-publishing.
Yeah.
And then our buddy Eric, the story that we told you about over there. So he was a cop up in Raleigh. And he was a veteran. He's a retired cop. I think he's retired or left. I don't know what the condition of that was. But same thing. So I introduced him to the company that he's using to edit and publish and market his book. And he had already changed things to make it so that it wouldn't impact real cases. Because they were all, it's all
sensitive information.
Yeah, it's supposed to be comedy. The book's called Pig Latin. And it's just about stories, goofy things, weird.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Strange things that happened to him as a cop. And they went back through, and the editing team, I think it's not Penguin. It doesn't matter. The editors came back from there, and they were like, we don't want to be part of editing this book because it's too pro-cop. So you got literally the same pushback. And it's satire. It's just jokes and humor, and it's
not what they're selling them. Yep. And if you look at and not all of them, but like literary agents, they're 22 years old, they're fresh out of college, and I think they do get off on like the gatekeeping. But if you read their bios, like there's certain platforms where agents can post for what they're looking for. It's whatever the lean is in society at this point. And white girl with a cargo van or officer is not what they were looking for. It wasn't, they just didn't want it. And so it's like, would you just not publish and like our generation is there's a DIY platform for everything. You can take a limo or you take an Uber. You can stay in a hotel or an Airbnb. And when I figured out that there was like another route around, like, it's what I had to do with 24-Hour PD, and it's what I'll do with that book. And it may not sell as many copies as it could with a big publisher, but like I didn't really care,
Where can people find the book?
Oh, anywhere as far like Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I'm told that the audio version is more fun because the way I say certain swear words is better than...
You recorded your own audiobook? Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, it was not a beautiful process. As you know, you do understand equipment and sound. Yep. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to record an audiobook in a studio, and it's like $600 a day. And I said, well, we're not doing that. So I put pillows all around my closet and shoved a camera in there. But like, as you can see, it's a book. Mm-hmm. It's a book. And I had already read it 800 times to do all the editing. Mm-hmm. So when I got to here, and it's like, I got to read this whole bloody thing out loud, but I did it, and people seem to enjoy I guess it is more fun when the author, but I will tell you about books that I've learned since publishing this. I didn't think that book signings were like a thing. Like I thought that was just for famous people.
Okay.
And so when it first came out, I was at the doctor, and this very sweet nurse, who I had seen maybe like for half a second one time before, she came in. It was the first time I had seen someone holding it. And I'm in the like sitting up on the thing, and she's holding it like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so cool. It really was neat. But I don't know her. Mm-hmm. And she said, would you sign it for me? And I thought, I thought that was not really a thing, but okay. And she said, well, I'm going to leave it right here. And she puts it down on the thing next to me with a pen. And she said, I'll come back and get it. So I open it up, and I write Casey Roman. And I shut it, and I put it down. She comes back at the end, and she picks it up again like this, and she goes, I'm going to wait till I get home to read what you wrote.
Oh.
And I thought, well, I'm going to save you some time. I'm gonna save you. So this is what I wrote. So I've learned since then that even if you have no idea who's standing in front of you, you better come up with some way to make it real personal, real fast. Because I made that mistake once. Yeah. You live and learn,
This is true.
Not taught in college. It just wasn't mentioned.
But which made you feel more special? The random person in Walmart saying, it's the prostitute lady, or it's the lady on TV. Lady. Or sign my book, please.
The one that's more special is when I do bigger talks on this book, someone will always come up to me after and talk about their issue or how they deal with suicide. And that I'm like, it validates putting that part back in the book. Mm-hmm. Or I've been really hesitant to include it in like any public speaking I do because it is a sensitive topic. And 100% of the time, someone will come up after. Interestingly enough, so a lot of the officers read it, which horrified me. I was not like, we have been through some stuff, but like there's every little detail about me that you could and like, I don't care that they know. I just wasn't expecting that like they would go read it or that the audio version would be in their patrol car. Like that part I wasn't ready for. How many conversations we've had about suicide, like that I would never have with them, or like the firefighters I've worked with, same thing, and like how freely they discussed it, and like what other way would we have had that? I don't think that people give not credit, but I think we don't really spend enough time acknowledging how much men deal with. They're just supposed to like just buck up and like keep on keeping. And I was amazed at like how very open they were about having that conversation, I guess because I had volunteered at first.
So to lighten the mood, then I have several questions that I've been waiting to ask. Have you ever taken any of like the suicide intervention training courses or anything like that?
Not.
So the one that I had to take, it's called ASSIST. It's an acronym, but as soon as I saw it, I'm like,
assisted suicide.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm like, why?
Maybe rebrand that.
Yeah, couldn't you come up with literally anything else? Because it kind of sounds like I'm supposed to help or like help them execute on their plan rather than
get them out of the plan. Yeah, now that I think about it, that is kind of atrocious.
It's applied suicide intervention skills training.
Okay.
But again,
and you had to take this for the military or for the hospital? This
was, I don't remember if it was a medic school or nursing school. I think it was for paramedic. I believe so.
So this was post-Army.
Yeah, so many of these things have like all these certifications that we had to do in the 2-year, 4-year, and they all for different applications and overlapping and stuff like that. But just the name, like literally anybody could have
rebrand slightly.
Workshop that a little bit.
Yeah, workshop.
But so going back to you touring the country, at any point did you start looking at like a new home or location? Like maybe I'll like this town and I'll stay. I'll plant roots here.
That's a great question, and the answer is no. The thing about living in the van, so when you're responsible for all of your resources, you always have to think ahead to the next day or that night. So when I would wake up somewhere, all I'm thinking about, and I think like this is what happens with homeless people. We ask like, why don't they go get a job? It's because when you are homeless, the only thing you can think of is like, where am I going to get my resources for that day? And so you're essentially trespassing every night. Like you wake up in a parking lot, or I did, and then it's like, all right, well, where am I? I need water. So you can only carry so much water on board. So where am I going to get water? Where am I going to make breakfast? Where am I going to find a shower? And then I have to find where am I going to shoot video of to work today to like make income. And then I have to immediately start thinking, well, where am I sleeping tonight? Like where's the next 24-hour gym, or where's the next? So it was kind of an exhausting way to live because like, do I have enough power? And I couldn't stay anywhere very long because I only got power off the alternator. And so the alternator is only going if the car is running. So you'd have to be generating miles all the time. So you're bound to like 4 days was the max that you could kind of stay anywhere without plugging in. So it was always just like on the go. And that part didn't really tire me, like always moving, but there was never any like, I did stay at a girlfriend's house in Buffalo for a couple of days, and I will never forget sitting in her recliner and like turning on the TV and like, it's sort of like coming off the Appalachian Trail and like staying at the Ritz. And there was air conditioning and like a real stove.
And a real shower.
Well, you kind of get feral. Like you just stop caring what you look like. And, I would cook breakfast like right in the Walmart parking lot. Like I just didn't give a damn anymore. And so, you get back into society and you're like, oh, like we use a fork and a knife here, I see. Okay.
Just completely spaced on the next one. One of them actually came up from that. But as you were writing the book, like, were there stories that you thought, like, not just like the suicide stuff and things like that, were there really stories that you were like, this absolutely cannot go in the book, even if it really did happen to me? And you don't have to answer.
No, I would answer that if I know there was nothing that happened. I mean, I get it as detailed as a sexual assault in there, so there was nothing that I felt like, but that was being able to control the content, because they didn't want the beginning part of the book, like they wanted none of that. They wanted the story of like the single woman alone on the road with the wind in her hair and like meeting these farmers and like industrial America and small town and like all these things they wanted that.
More of an eat, pray, love situation rather than...
Yes, that is the perfect way to describe it. And I thought, well, if someone reads this, they're going to think that everything was going great and I just like had a midlife crisis and just took off on the road, and like, no, I was not sure. No, it wasn't that I wasn't sure. Like, I knew that if I did not do something really dramatic, I was not going to be alive that much longer. Like, I knew that in every fiber of my body, that like I was just having too many close calls, where if it was one day where I just had a little bit too much of something or one more piece of bad news, like I wasn't going to be around. And the interesting thing about being in that situation is that it also took away all my fear. Because if you don't think you're going to be alive for that much longer, well, it doesn't really matter if I have any money. And it doesn't matter if this van falls apart on the road. And it doesn't matter if I crash and burn in the van. Because if I stay here in this house, unemployed, it's not going to be that much longer.
Right.
So, like, I mean, I might as well see what happens.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the bizarre gift of that level of depression, was that it just... there was no image to maintain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, News Lady was gone, and nobody was really paying attention to my social media. So, like, if it failed or succeeded, it didn't matter.
But then also you were able to be your true, authentic self.
Yeah, and I think that's what was the allure of my YouTube channel, was that when I don't really get a lot of nasty comments on YouTube. When I do, of course, woman to woman, we know it's always about what you look like. Mm-hmm. I am like skeletal for a while in that. I mean, I like rail thin. A lot of my hair is gone. Like, I look horrible. And there's been times where like someone comments and like a video from a while pops up, or people that like watch a video from a while ago and then watch now, and they're like, oh my God, you look so... I'm like, well, I have 3 meals a day, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. And like, I have a couch and I'm often lazy, and like, I have healthcare again. And so of course I'm going to look different. I'm a different person now, mm-hmm. but like, that's what clinical depression looks like. Like, you look like you're almost dead, because you kind of are.
I've looked back at some of our old content, and like, there's a lot of really good quips and things, but the equipment that we're using, the microphones, it was horrific. But I look at some of them, I'm like, I have to reshare it though. I have to, like, people have to see that we are amateurs, and because people do see some of the stuff that we have now, and they're like, oh, you guys are rich, or somebody's paying for it.
We're still amateurs. What are you talking about? Pretending like we used to be amateurs. We're still amateurs.
But there are people who will watch your progression, mm-hmm. even if they don't ever comment or engage. Yep. They see that you continually keep improving, mm-hmm. and they think that either you've struck gold somehow, mm-hmm. somebody's investing in it. Yeah. And so then they get mad at you for that. They're like, oh, you used to be cool because you were poor, and now you're not. And I'm like,
we're so poor.
Yeah, no, still struggling.
Yeah. But moving on to my next question then, it's kind of in the same segment. Did you like run into or meet up or do like like an RV caravan thing with any of the van life people?
I would rather set myself on fire.
That's why I was hoping you had chopped off a few man buns. I was hoping we were going to hear that story.
I became fodder for like other channels because I was usually making fun of them. Mm-hmm. I never targeted any of them directly, but it was so fake. Like in the other van life channels, she was always in a bikini. and I was like, I've wanted more clothes on in here. And, I know how much money they're making because I have some idea from, like, view counts and all that. And I was confident they were staying in hotels. Mm-hmm. But, like, it was a lot of drama, like mm-hmm. a lot of and that's not who you actually meet on the road. Yeah. Okay. So the people who I met on the road who did live in their vans were usually poor, like legitimately poor. There was a lot of instances of medical debt driven poverty, and like that's why they lived in their van. But I think my channel was also different, and I encouraged 0 people to do what I was doing. Like, I was not trying to sell.
Don't be me.
Yeah, like, this is not
glamorous.
This is not, and I would get, and still to this day, because people still watch those videos, I'll get these emails about people's plans to sell everything they own.
Oh my gosh.
And live in an RV or travel. And I'm like, it's not what you think it is. And I really tried to show the reality of that. And for me, and there's a whole hashtag for it, hashtag solo female van traveler, whatever. You have to be really okay with being alone for very long amounts of time. And you have to be very okay with being in parts of the country where you're going to be the minority or nobody is going to be able to relate to you. There were parts of Louisiana where I remember I didn't talk to someone for like a week because I didn't know what to like. It was poverty like I'd never seen poverty. And, here I am by choice, and they're in their shack, because that's what the die that life handed them, or in the Rust Belt, or like Arkansas. I mean, I'd never seen so much meth anywhere. Like, it was just like there were really hard parts of the country to live in. And so I felt like the other van lifers were like going to San Diego and like finding the beautiful places. But I was really curious to see what the rest of America looked like. And it was not wealth. It was poverty. And the Rust Belt in particular, I thought, gosh, this all was, at one point, this was all money and like industry. And now it's all these caved out, abandoned factories and like people who, I have the option to keep driving, and they don't. Like, they are going to be here, and I don't. And the only people who can help is allegedly the United States government. And, like, I feel like I could probably do more here than they're doing. But I was really curious to see the country, but I wasn't. At no point did I think, let me go meet up with somebody who's hawking a QVC thing that they got on their sponsored whatever. People asked frequently, like people who follow. I did have one rather scary run-in with a guy who was tracking my whereabouts. Because it wasn't terribly hard to do because there was a theme to my videos. I really liked small towns, farmers, unique architecture. So knowing that, you could kind of figure out. And I got to Eureka, Arkansas, after worshiping Sam Walton in where's Walmart based out of?
Arkansas.
Yeah, but it's a town. What is it called? I would say it starts with a B.
I know exactly what it is, and it's right on the tip of my tongue.
Well, there's like nothing in Arkansas, and then there's like the town where Walmart was founded, and then there's just money everywhere. And it's the like nicest the Walmart you've ever
concentration
seen.
of billionaires or something like that in the country.
Yeah, I should have stayed there.
But then you went to the town over where it was meth central.
Yeah, actually, now that we're talking about this, like, I should have just ponied up to that Walmart. But in Eureka, which is a really cool town built on like the side of a mountain, he had sent me a message saying, "Are you going to Eureka next?" And the fact that he could guess it, like I couldn't really see his picture because on YouTube you just get this like little tiny.
Yeah,
but it just like
that's unnerving.
And I was walking around Eureka and like shooting video,
and at any moment he could pop up.
No,
or
it wasn't
did.
even in my. I had forgotten about it by the time that I was in Eureka. But I'm looking at the houses, and around the corner comes a guy, and he's walking real fast in my direction. And I don't know how, because all you see on YouTube is a little tiny thumbnail. I just knew it was him. And he walked right up to me, and he said, "Are you Casey Roman?" And I said, "No." And walked away. And I got right in that van. And that's when I started delaying my videos. Like, I started adding in So I never did the public appearance. I just thought, I'm too easy. I'm a target.
Yeah.
That's actually two. If you ever get a wild hair, there's another kind of theme or genre that you can do with that. But I've seen a lot of YouTubers. There's two that I subscribe to now. One of them, every video is like taking one type of transportation. So he did these narrow boats in Europe.
Oh yeah.
He does like trains. So he'll do like trains across, like traveling from here to another part of the country. I think he did Alaska to Miami.
Wow.
and then other countries and things like that as well. But the guy that I've watched recently, which it's hilarious, but also really dumb. He did 2 of these videos. One of them, he went to every rainforest cafe in the United States. He and a buddy road tripped.
That is.
They road tripped each of them and ate at every single one of them.
Okay.
And then the other one, he did Margaritaville.
Was he sponsored to do that, or was he had a passion for cheese fries?
No, he had some sponsor, not by those restaurants. And
really?
They even asked. He's like, nope, because I'm not endorsing your product. It sucks.
Oh, okay. So that didn't go as they planned.
No, but the videos are really funny because he's kind of got like that kind of dark humor, and he's like dragging on. You're like 10 minutes in the video, and it's like a 45-minute long video, and you're like, why are you still doing this? Why am I still watching you do this?
That's the question. Yeah.
But,
and this is the shit that he watches.
The internet is a strange...
and he wonders why I don't want to hang out with him and watch the shit that you watch.
I genuinely try. She's like, you're always on your phone. You're always doing this. I'm genuinely trying to both be entertained and also try and figure out how these people got big.
Because it's weird.
Yeah.
It's an anomaly.
I'm just like, I'm watching like their tics. I'm watching their editing. I'm watching all of it. I'm like taking in more than just what they're saying and what they're doing. And she's like, I don't like it. It's all yelling.
Yep.
It's people screaming and yelling.
It's an odd... So that answers your question. Why did you... I thought there were great stories out there, but YouTube was not... If I had walked around in a bikini and like, I could have probably had a huge YouTube... Well, maybe not. But that's what people wanted, and that's not what I was... Out of
the video and editing, and I guess if you want to lump news in there, since there's kind of more jobs and tasks involved with that, what would you think, or what would you say is your favorite part? Is it finding the story, filming it, editing it? Editing, really?
Yeah. Editing was my favorite part because you get, even in the van, and in the van it was tough to edit because vans are made of steel.
Yep.
And so whose ever internet I was trying to steal that night, tough through a windowless white cargo van, squished up against the Starbucks. But you shoot all day and you're exhausted, and then I get into bed in the van, I'm all crunched in there. And the same thing with editing the documentaries. Like, I think when you're a visual storyteller, you've already seen the story in your head, like you kind of know. And then it's like making a tapestry. You just weave this thing together. And then I love hitting upload, and I'm like, look, I made you this. You're going to love this farmer. Like, wait till you see this oil rig guy. He's hilarious. And like, it was fun. Mm-hmm. And it was, without realizing it, I had recreated my job in a different way. Mm-hmm. So news didn't want me as a storyteller, but pretty quickly I had found a new audience, and they didn't give a damn, and I had full creative control. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, when your whole income is based on YouTube, though, which a lot of TikTokers just learned, you building your castle on someone else's lawn is a risky endeavor. And I've been through 2 demonetizations and all kinds of nonsense with YouTube.
How did you get demonetized the first time?
Well, you don't know.
You don't know? No. They don't tell you?
It used to be worse. Now, and it depends on your channel size too, because if you have a channel, we'll call him a handler because I can't think of what it's called.
Handler,
you have a rep.
A pimp.
You have a rep at YouTube once you reach a certain size.
Oh, okay.
And they work with, that's why some of the videos that I watch, and I'm like, they talk about the rule that they just had a whole conversation with their YouTube rep about, where so like on YouTube you can't show a fully automatic weapon firing unless it's for like a work of art, so like a short film or a movie. So they dramatize going to the range to get away with
like a
firing.
Script.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many rules. You end up realizing that you're still working for a media company.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's still big media. It's still their rules. It's still their... So today I still have it and I still post on it, but I don't really... if it doesn't make money, I don't care. I just do it to do it. But anyone who's like, that's their whole world, I think, oof, you better have a diversified portfolio because...
You hear that?
So we... would you consider, and I saw something recently about this, But what I've kind of thought and what some other people have said is that typically the progression is like TikTok, Instagram, whatever else. And then you're trying to take that audience and move them to YouTube because that's the bigger, more mature platform. And then the guys that are on YouTube are trying to get into TV and film.
Yeah, I guess we've seen more of that. Like we saw Mr. Beast.
Oh yeah, it's the Amazon thing now.
Yeah. I feel like when you're as big as him, it doesn't really matter where you are. Like your audience is still gonna. But for the smaller channels, they pull the plug on you.
Yep.
If that's your whole. I mean, I haven't seen that much crying in the streets when TikTok got pulled of like people's withdrawal. Thank you for drooling on me.
Well, also, I mean, people are paying their mortgages and.
Yeah, and I get that, but like, you're still built your castle on someone else's lawn, and you have to understand the inherent, in the same way that I never saw a life that didn't include working at Channel 6.
Right.
If you see a life that, TikTok goes on forever, I promise you, maybe it wasn't Sunday, but at some point, either it will lose its relevancy or and so if you don't have that flexibility or that ability to reinvent yourself, like that's a lot harder than trying to build an audience. A lot harder.
So I've seen, and people have made the transitions between the different platforms, and some of them done really well. Some of them have gone back and forth. YouTube, several years ago, they tried to do like what Netflix did and everybody else has done, is they tried to create their own like original studio. Mm-hmm. And so they took some of the bigger channels and then they gave them episodic series where they actually funded it. So you do your same show, similar format, but with YouTube's budget rather than your sponsor's budget. And that kind of like floundered, but I wonder if they'll bring that back one day. But would you consider, if you had the opportunity, going back into TV, or would you want to stay with like new media?
I love TV, and like I loved being in a newsroom because it's full of masochists, and you can do things in a newsroom that like, boy, you can't do in real estate, And when I was in news, I mean, I threw my microphone at people during Hurricane Florence. Like you could just do whatever you want, and now in real estate, I have to say yes, that makes sense, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that. So it's different. I think the news that I believe in doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. I really believe in like long format, get your hands in there. And that doesn't exist. And I think it will get progressively worse because you can't recruit a good reporter anymore. When I was like before me and when I was in it, if you wanted to tell stories, you worked in local news because that was they controlled distribution. They have the satellites. They control distribution. Well, today, a 20-year-old knows, or 18-year-old or less, that all they need is a cell phone and a Wi-Fi connection, and they can tell their stories without management to a much bigger platform. Mm-hmm. And so the newsrooms are depopulating because they can't even get reporters. Yep. Like, if you're really good at reporting, you could go start your own true crime channel or your own podcast. So I don't know that will ever come back. And I think the population as a whole has lost so much faith that, we just watched what Joe Rogan did to an election. It's who they trust, yep. Not necessarily what they trust. So I don't know that will ever come back. I certainly miss TV an awful lot. It was a lot of fun to be in. But I think, I've gotten asked a lot about like, well, how did you get your channel like that fast and that? No matter what platform you're on, if you can tell a good story, mm-hmm. people listen to a good story. Like we know that people will block off a whole day and binge watch a series. So there's really no excuse for like why long format can't do good in news. Like if it's a great story, they'll still show up. Yep. But like that's the most important thing is what kind of story are you telling? And I do think that after what happened on Sunday on TikTok, we will see an inflection from like that product hawking kind of influencing. Did you see that a lot of them like purged their sins like they were in a Catholic church?
Mm-mm. Neither of us are on TikTok. You didn't see that? Neither am I, but like it was an amazing thing to watch the aftermath of. So a lot of like the famous ones like admitted
What was fake?
So are these like girls who are fitness influencers admitting to BBLs?
Yes. So that happened. Wow. Or like makeup influencers, like saying
they didn't think it was coming back.
They didn't think it was coming back. So like a lot of the workout said like they.
But then I don't understand when they want to jump to a different platform. And
I didn't say they were smart. I
don't understand.
Yeah, so they had, and in some ways it might be brilliant for their careers because now they'll get a whole new level of attention that like you're a fraud, not good attention.
Yeah.
But I guess of the mindset of any attention's good attention. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think that we'll see like a back to people wanting to hear good stories and not like this like selling of. It's like QVC. Yeah. It's like the modern QVC.
Okay.
So I'm confident in that. Whether or not TV provides a platform for that like I could participate in, who knows?
So
no, go ahead.
I've seen. And I don't really have like a fully fleshed out theory about this yet, but I've seen where people will blatantly take a couple facts, change a couple words or a couple metrics, and post the lie, knowing that will get them engagement, and then everybody else in the comments will fill it in with, or on X, for example, Twitter, you have the community notes. So the real news and story ends up coming out. So you can't really, once you're big enough, you can't get away with a real lie. You might get away with some small detail where something was, whatever that nobody really cares about. But I wonder if we're at a point where everything is going to have to be sensationalized to get people to even
pay attention,
go and look and see, is this a real story? Like, did this really happen? Because if I just post a headline, explosion in Wilmington, people would be like, cool, could have been anything. And then if you're like, the U.S. Army accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb and it detonated, and then community notes is like, it was literally a grenade. Everybody's fine.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think the cream always rises to the top. Like, well, you get to pick what part of that you want to be in. And like, you can absolutely make a ton of money off of being the clickbait.
Yeah.
It just was, I didn't believe in it in news. I never believed in clickbaity titles. I'll never forget an email I got from a producer, not at ECT, but at the national show, that she wrote in all caps in the email, "Hype the horror." And I thought, well, it's not really my ministry. So
talking about the clickbait thing for a second, because we got hit a couple weeks back. YouTube was saying that the episode title or thumbnail or something like that was clickbait. And I was like, it's not. I'm literally saying exactly what's in the video. And I had read something years ago, and I actually had seen a video from a really big science YouTube channel that was like talking about the theory behind it. But he was like, when people talk about clickbait, they're always thinking the like stereotypical like bad clickbait. But if you really break it down, there's two kinds of clickbait, because you have to make it exciting enough, or leave something for people to like crave or desire. Like, I have to go watch this. I need to understand. I need to know what's going on. So you have good clickbait, you have bad clickbait. But then you get hit with something on like YouTube or wherever else. They're like, oh, this is clickbait. So now you're demonetized. You're like,
yeah.
Are you saying like a lot of people are clicking it and they're mad? Why would you be upset?
You won't even know.
Yeah,
They're not even going to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's risky business. I think it's good to play in those circles, but building your whole world on top, no.
Yeah, our show is everywhere, but with podcasts specifically, the only metrics across all the platforms that are just visible to everybody is YouTube. So everybody looks at the podcast YouTube channel to gauge how successful do we think you are on Spotify based on how many subscribers you have on YouTube, for example.
Oh, geez.
And so we put our focus on YouTube for the most part. We upload full videos to X, to Rumble, to Spotify, which distributes to Apple and Amazon and blah, 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 whatever else, and then Substack. And I give those platforms don't have a lot of ways to engage with people anyways. Respond to comment, but you can't like go out and comment without having like a user account and stuff like that.
Sure.
So it's like gamifying and trying to really build up in one space. But then our social media is lacking because we just throw stuff up there. Like, this is a funny clip. And I try and title it and things like that. And people will get super upset, or they'll be arguing with me on X or something like that. And they'll click on the nonprofit, or they'll click on the podcast. They're like, oh, your podcast only has 69 followers. You're a failure. And I'm like, okay, go look at literally any platform where the actual audio is, dude. It's there because I understand that you need to be everywhere. Mm-hmm. Not everywhere is going to be great, but once that audience moves or an algorithm changes, you want all your stuff to be there. Yeah.
It's a shifting target.
But it's very, very, very time consuming. It's
a lot of work. Yeah. I don't think anybody ever realizes that part. I think there was some poll, like the number 1 or 2 career that like kids in college wanted was to be a YouTuber or influencer. And I thought, ooh.
Number 1, I believe.
Honey, pick electrician.
Yeah.
Try a machinist. You'll never look for work. Mm-hmm. But you say one thing wrong on a channel and
you're canceled.
You're done. That's it. Out.
And we, like, when we started this, I definitely thought, and I think both of us thought this, that it was going to be a lot easier. But there were some decisions that we made early on that have changed after having some conversations. Do you know who John Cardillo is?
I don't think so.
He used to work for Fox and Newsrooms. He's a retired NYPD cop, lives in Florida now. He's a friend of mine he dated a girl I went to high school with. But I had a conversation with him a couple months back because we hadn't had any guests other than my buddy from Raleigh. And I was just embarrassed on the equipment that we had, like our set and everything like that. It's like, dude, doesn't matter. People are just looking for those people. Call them up, say, hey, do you want to come on my show? Some of them are going to say yes, some are going to say no. He's like, but you got to do it. Like, it doesn't matter if you do it now. So then I was like, okay, as soon as we sold the house in Leland, I was like, I'm buying equipment because I don't want to be as embarrassed when people start coming on with us.
You've just done great. I mean, none of it's cheap, and it's hard to keep up with every year. There's new equipment and what works and what doesn't. And when you don't have a studio, you got to make do with what you have.
Yeah, I did the math, and I think I told you previously when we were first starting, for one, the file sizes, I didn't have anything set up correctly. So we've always recorded in 4K, but we were using entirely too high bit rate. I don't remember what codec we were using at that time, but like the file sizes were just absurdly massive. So then I would have to encode them. That takes a period of time. And then import them into whatever I was editing with at that time, then edit it, export it, do all the other work around it. And I had figured out at that time for every 30 minutes of video, it was 6 hours of total work. Mm-hmm. And now for 30 minutes, I think I'm at 2.5.
Yeah.
So it's not nearly as bad, but it's still, for an hour-long episode, it's still going to be like 3-4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
I mean, I think I've told you my whole life story at this point, so I think you got the gist of it.
Yeah, we'll have links in the descriptions and everything for the book and audiobook. Or do you have any other projects people should know about?
I do, but I can't talk about
it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to save that for hopefully our next.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to start having some recurring guests.
But you are currently a real estate agent still.
100% real estate agent.
If anybody in the Wilmington surrounding areas wants to hire you on to find a house or sell a house.
We'll talk about heroin and prostitution and meth and
absolutely.
Look at houses, and you'll have the time of your life.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much,
This has been
guys.
fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next one after I stop this recording.